Welcome back to Good Morning Sri Lanka on MTV Sports. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have a guest in the studio. Let me introduce to Good Morning Sri Lanka in the studio, Mrs. Sama Rajakaruna, who is an independent consultant for gender equality and women's rights. Very good morning, ma'am.
Good morning to you too, Mevan.
Yeah, so, let's get straight to the topic. Before we get into a bit about, how you got involved in this work, I understand that the 25th of November is the International Day to eliminate gender equality, if I'm not mistaken.
Gender-based violence.
Yes, if you'd just like to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, it's a UN designated day, like you said, the International Day to eliminate gender-based violence and violence against women specifically. It's a day where globally they commemorate this day and they do all sorts of activities to talk about gender-based violence, but specifically violence against women. Right. They have talk shows like this, they have street dramas, different organizations organize awareness raising campaigns, because gender-based violence and specifically violence against women is an issue not only in Sri Lanka but globally.
Now, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because my next question was, why you really got involved in this field, and also as an independent consultant, what exactly does your work include?
Right. I've always been interested in issues related to women, and women do face a lot of issues, be it gender discrimination, gender-based violence, which is one form of gender discrimination. And when I was following my studies at university, I followed a course on gender equality, and I got to know a lot more about issues faced by women, and I thought this is my calling, and I thought I should do something more about it. Right. As a citizen of this country, do more about issues faced by women in this country. Yeah.
Now, taking a look at Sri Lanka, how big of an issue is this? You mentioned that some of the statistics even suggest that last year was probably one of the largest or the highest recorded numbers in terms of gender-based violence and sexual violence. So how big of an issue is it in Sri Lanka comparative to the rest of the world?
I think it's an issue everywhere. It's not only in Sri Lanka. Yes, Sri Lanka, like you said, has recorded big number of gender-based violence and violence against women issues, but it's we can't even say that it's a big problem only for Sri Lanka. If you take any country, it is an issue. Last year recorded the highest number of sexual violence against women and children. We don't know whether it's because the incidents have increased or whether it's because people are more aware of the rights and that it is a violation of their rights, and people in return have reported these incidents. We don't know. What we do know is that when you look at the violence that they face, the type of violence has become far more aggressive. It's far more severe, and what we always say is that it can happen to anyone, irrespective of whether you're educated, irrespective of whether you are economically poor or rich, what ethnicity, what geographical location you come from. It can happen to any woman in this country.
Yeah, and also this increase in the recorded number of violence. What do you see as the main reason behind this? Is it because, I don't know, do you see a specific reason that really makes this problem grow bigger?
See, different people have said no, it's alcoholism, it's economical facts, it's lack of education, but I think the most critical issue is the power imbalance. Like I said before, if it can happen to educated women, if it can happen to economically rich women who have some sort of economic safeguard, it's not those reasons. The underlying issue is the power imbalance.
Right, and what are probably the main steps in your opinion? As you see, we have a lot of organizations working towards women empowerment. What is probably the main solution, and what can we really do, in your personal opinion, as bystanders, as people who probably encounter this on and off in day-to-day life, but really don't take a step forward?
Yeah. Now, first and foremost, I think there should be awareness creation. To talk about the issue, we have to have an understanding about what the issue is, what is violence against women. There has to be a lot of awareness creation. There has to be awareness about what the remedies are. I mean, there are laws in place in this country. There are service providers in this country. So people must know where they can go. First of all, they must know what the issue is, and then where they can go to get some redress. And even as individuals, I think it's not only organizations or the legal enforcement sector, it's as individuals, what can we do? We don't need to stand around as bystanders. We can take some action as individuals, giving some support to people who are facing, creating an environment that is conducive for people to come out and talk about the issues that they face. As individuals, we can take steps, and I think it should start from within. It should start from each person.
And also, I understand that there's a women's forum that is in place in Sri Lanka. If you'd just like to talk about that and the services that they provide.
Yeah, actually it's not a women's forum. It's called the Forum Against Gender-Based Violence. It has a membership, and the membership consists of government, which is represented by the Ministry of Child Development and Women's Empowerment and the National Committee on Women. There are UN organizations in it, international non-governmental organizations, local non-governmental organizations, as well as individuals who are members of the Forum Against Gender-Based Violence.
Yes, and it's very interesting that, true enough, I just mentioned that there's a women's forum. Now, one of the main aspects is that a lot of people think that it should be only women who should stand up for this cause, but one of probably the main solutions of this is if everyone, especially males, engage in stopping and speaking up against gender-based violence and gender inequality.
You're so right, Mevan. We call it the Forum Against Gender-Based Violence because even though it's mostly women who are affected by gender-based violence, it can happen to anyone. This forum has been working since 2005 on gender-based violence issues, and especially during the 16 days of activism. I'll talk a little bit more about the 16 days of activism, but especially during that time it has had annual campaigns. The 16 days of activism starts from the 25th of November each year and goes on till the 10th of December. During that 16-day period, like I said, different campaigns are held to raise awareness. This time it's about getting up and speaking up and working together to eliminate violence against women. And that togetherness, like we mentioned, is really important because for a long time even women's organizations have been addressing the issue only with women, and we know now you can't work in isolation. We have to work with men. Maybe the majority of the perpetrators are men, but there are so many other men who are supportive of the cause, and we have to work together. So it's really important to engage men to eliminate violence against women.
And also in terms of creating awareness about what people should do. Now, talking about public transport and other places where a lot of women, especially in Sri Lanka, complain that they face some sort of harassment, and especially during before they're even 20 years of age. What can be made to promote action among people?
It's interesting you brought up the issue of public transport, because one of the initiatives that the Forum Against Gender-Based Violence did was to have an awareness raising campaign about sexual harassment in public transport specifically. The forum members branded a few buses that ran all around Sri Lanka on with messages on eliminating gender-based violence, and they also provided a helpline, that's a Women in Need helpline, the number of which is 011-471-8585. That's 011-471-8585, where you can report violence. And there were messages, there were stickers put, there was training given to bus drivers and conductors about the issue, how they can take action if somebody comes and reports that, you know, they have been sexually harassed in a bus. So that was a very interesting campaign by the Forum Against Gender-Based Violence. We got some very, very positive feedback also. There was some research done after the initiative, and it seemed like some women were waiting to get into a bus that was branded because they felt safer. And we heard of cases where some of these bus drivers and conductors have gone back to their villages and had spoken about this issue from what they had learned, and they have taken steps to help people who have been suffering. And even the bus owners felt that, you know, they got a better income because, you know, more people wanted to go on that bus. So there is actually an economic benefit also when you address this issue.
And talking about campaigns, now there is also a campaign that's been titled, you mentioned 1 billion rising.
That's right.
Now,
yes.
world statistics and taking a look at that, you know, it's very, very, you know, disappointing and very shocking to find that, as you mentioned right before the show, that 1 in 3 women, you know, experience some sort of violence.
That's
Would you just like to talk about that campaign?
Yeah, this campaign was initiated by someone called Eve Ensler, who's the founder of V-Day, and she actually initiated this campaign because of this specific issue. I mean, it's horrendous statistics. UN has said that 1 in 3 women globally face some form of violence throughout their lives. So that's very, very shocking for us. So she wants to get both men and women to rise up against this kind of violence, to talk about this issue, to coordinate the work that is being done to eliminate gender-based violence and violence against women specifically. And in Sri Lanka also, the Forum Against Gender-Based Violence has been nominated as the organization to take this campaign forward in Sri Lanka. In South Asia, an organization called Sangath, headed by Ms. Kamla Bazin, she's the one who's kind of coordinating the work in South Asia. And we are trying to, with this campaign, I think this campaign will be launched on the 14th of February, which is Valentine's Day. It's trying to get women who it's trying to get both men and women to work against gender-based violence and have a coordinated effort to address this issue.
Right, okay. And also a lot of people you know, think that in Sri Lanka especially that there are not enough laws that promote women empowerment and the rights of women, but this is not the case actually.
Well, we have a lot of laws. Like I mentioned to you before, we have the penal code, which has the laws against sexual harassment, against assault, grievous bodily harm. We also have a special law against domestic violence, the Prevention of Domestic Violence Act. There are discriminatory laws also, but there are laws to address the issue of violence against women. But unfortunately, the matter is that, you know, we have laws, but how are they implemented? You know, sometimes you go to the police station with a case and the case is not recorded. Even if you do record a case and you file a case, it may take a very, very long time for you to get redress justice. It's very expensive. Legal aid is provided by certain organizations, but not everybody can access legal aid. So it's a tedious process. That's the issue, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. That the process is what is really, you know, not effective enough, but the laws are in place, and we need to improve on making this a more effective process where the implementation can also be as effective. Now we are going to continue our discussion with Samaraja Karuna, but right about now let's take a short commercial break. We'll be back.